Good Friday to Easter, how God's hidden twist defeated death forever. What if the flower you planted to honor your late child was ripped from the ground in rage? Marcy had always believed in quiet kindness. After losing her son, Ezra, to a rare illness, she turned her grief into something living: the Hope Garden. A small, hand-tended plot just outside her home, planted every spring to bloom in April. It was her way of remembering his smile, his favorite colors, the way he'd twirl in the daffodils at age 6. It wasn't big, it wasn't grand, but it meant the world. So when she came out one Good Friday morning to find the garden torn apart, petals shredded, soil upturned, roots exposed like wounded limbs, she stood frozen, mouth open, breath stolen. And then she heard the voice. About time someone taught you where your property ends. It was her neighbor, that woman the block whispered about, Mrs. Howard, or as Marcy's kids called her with teenage mockery, Hoa Karen, the kind of neighbor who measured lawns with rulers, who glared at barking dogs through closed blinds, who once called animal control on a toddler's birthday petting zoo. But this was unthinkable. Marcy walked to the edge of the wrecked plot. Why would you do this? You're trespassing. Your stupid little shrine creeped into my easement, Karen snapped, waving a crumpled property map like a sword. I warned you last year. This is my land, and you don't get to make it about your sob story. Marcy's throat dried. These flowers, they're for Ezra. Oh please, Karen sneered. You want sympathy? Plant them on your porch, not my border. Marcy didn't yell. She simply took out her phone, trembling, and began filming. But Karen saw and lunged. She knocked the phone from Marcy's hand. Then, and this part later spread like wildfire on the neighborhood group, she stomped a sunflower flat, cursing as if the flower had personally insulted her. That's when the mailman showed up. Reggie, a man who had delivered letters to this block for 18 years, stepped off his truck and took in the scene. The destroyed garden, Marcy shaking, Karen shouting. Reggie said nothing, just pulled out his own phone and began to record. Silently, calmly. Karen didn't notice at first. She was too busy lecturing Marcy on boundary laws and emotional manipulation. But when she did, when she saw Reggie, her voice faltered. You can't record me. It's a public sidewalk, he said simply. And I know what this garden means. Turned out Reggie had a son too, and he'd helped Marcy carry bags of mulch last spring. That's how he knew about the garden. That's why he cared. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Because Reggie, being both sentimental and precise, had installed a dashcam facing the sidewalk for safety. A camera that caught Karen earlier that morning dragging a trash bin into the flower bed and using the edge to tear up roots. The footage was clear. Full face. Full rage. The garden wasn't on her property. Not even close. By Easter Sunday, the footage had gone viral on local Facebook. A reporter picked up the story. And as people shared their own stories of Karen's pettiness, the time she accused a kid of stealing a pine cone, the time she reported a charity lemonade stand, the tide turned. Karen tried to post a defense. It was just flowers, she wrote. People are too sensitive. But screenshots don't lie. And when the city council learned that Marcy's garden was part of a registered memorial green space, one that received a local preservation grant, things got worse. A formal complaint was filed. Karen's job, ironically, was with a community wellness nonprofit. She was asked to resign. Her HOA board position? Revoked. Her fence, which had violated setback rules for years, was suddenly under investigation. And as for the garden, by the next week, neighbors, even ones who'd barely spoken to Marcy before, came together to replant it. Some brought flowers. Some brought stories. One woman brought a ceramic sign with Ezra's name, etched in gold leaf. Karen watched it all from behind her blinds. And Marcy? She stood quietly among the daffodils, smiling at Reggie, the man who chose to act when it mattered. Sometimes what seems like the end, even a cruel one, is just a twist before the resurrection. What do you think? When does a boundary become cruelty? And when does standing up become more than defense but a healing act? Karen didn't leave her house for the next 3 days. Marcy noticed the drawn curtains, the untouched trash bins, the silence. But she wasn't thinking about revenge. Not really. She was too overwhelmed with what had happened and what had risen from it. It was strange. Something inside her had shifted. For the first time since Ezra's passing, she didn't feel alone in remembering him. On Easter morning, she found a folded note wedged in her mailbox. No return address. The handwriting was neat, nervous. I lost my sister last year. Your garden gave me a place to grieve without judgment. I'm sorry she heard it. I hope you don't stop planting. Marcy read it twice, tears falling freely. Later that day, Reggie came by again, not in uniform this time. He held a flat wooden box. Thought you might want this back, he said, handing over Marcy's phone repaired and clean. He smiled. And something else. Inside the box were printed stills from the dashcam footage timestamped, labeled undeniable. Alongside them was a folder, a copy of the memorial garden permit, a cease and desist letter drafted by a pro bono lawyer from the local university's community legal clinic, and a letter of public apology from the HOA who admitted that Karen had been warned multiple times about harassing neighbors but no action had been taken until now. Marcy blinked. How did you? Reggie shrugged. Let's just say I've seen too many people get walked over by folks who think rules don't apply to them. That was when the second twist came. Because across the street, watching through a cracked open garage door, was 14-year-old Jonas, Karen's nephew. No one even knew she had family staying with her. But apparently Jonas had been sent to live with Karen after his mother Karen's sister passed away in a car accident last fall. And Jonas had been recording everything, too. Later that night, Marcy heard a soft knock. She opened the door and saw a boy in a hoodie, holding a USB stick in one hand and a small potted marigold in the other. I didn't know what she was doing, Jonas said quietly. She told me not to say anything, but I think you should have this. The USB stick contained 3 weeks of secret footage. Karen yelling at delivery drivers, screaming at birds, complaining to Jonas about how people milk grief for attention, including Marcy by name. But more importantly, it included audio of her planning the garden destruction, bragging that, if I ruin it before Easter, she won't have time to fix it in front of all her weepy fans. It was intentional, deliberate, malicious. Jonas looked ashamed. She's not always like that, but sometimes she is. She made me feel like I owed her silence. I don't want to be like her. Marcy took the marigold and knelt to his eye level. You're not. By Tuesday, everything unraveled. The local paper ran a follow-up. Neighborhood garden targeted in vandalism, nephew leaks proof of premeditated destruction. Accompanied by quotes from Jonas, with his name protected. The article painted a fuller picture, one of control, bitterness, and a woman who weaponized her grief into cruelty. Karen had become a symbol, but not the one she thought. The HOA held an emergency town hall. Neighbors spoke. Some were furious. Some just tired. One elderly man, who had once been seen as Karen's only defender, stood and said, I ignored the signs. I thought she just needed to vent. But silence is complicity, and I regret mine. Karen tried to show up to the meeting late, sunglasses on, jaw tight. But when she stepped through the doors, the room went quiet, and stayed that way. She turned and left before a single word was spoken. The legal process took longer, of course. The community lawyer moved by Marcy's story took the case personally. With both Reggie's footage and Jonas's recordings, there was enough evidence to file for property damage, emotional distress, and even a restraining order. The city began reevaluating her permit for short-term guardianship of Jonas, citing emotional instability and verbal abuse. Karen's employers, now aware of the viral scandal, officially severed ties. The nonprofit's board issued a press release denouncing her behavior. Her public speaking engagements, consulting gigs, and wellness workshops all evaporated. What had begun as a smashed garden had become something larger, a reckoning. But the point wasn't just justice. It was redemption, and Jonas proved that. He began helping Marcy with the new garden, quietly at first, then more confidently. He dug, weeded, even painted a small sign, Ezra's Corner, hope always grows back. He started asking Marcy questions about flowers, About Ezra. About how people go on after loss. And she answered, patiently, kindly. One day he asked, "Do you think people like my aunt can change?" Marcy thought for a long time. "I think they can. But sometimes people don't want to. And you can't wait for them forever." "Is it bad to hope?" "No," she smiled. "But it's also okay to protect yourself from people who don't know how to love gently." By the end of April, the garden was fuller than it had ever been. Neighbors dropped by regularly. Some just sat. Some brought coffee. One woman hosted a grief circle on the grass. Another built a tiny bench. It became more than a place. It became a sanctuary. And Karen? Her house went up for sale in June. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a moving truck and silence. Jonas went to live with his cousin across town, someone with a real interest in helping him heal. The last time Marcy saw Karen, she was sitting in the back seat of a dusty SUV, windows up, staring blankly at the crowd gathered in the garden. For the first time, Karen looked small. Marcy didn't wave. She didn't need to. The garden was enough. It had been a quiet few weeks. The garden continued to bloom, and with it, Marcy found her breath again. Every morning, she walked barefoot through the dewy grass, letting the smell of lilies and hyacinths fill her lungs. Where grief once lived, something else had taken root. Not joy, not yet, but peace. And peace was enough for now. But peace has a way of being tested. One early morning in late May, just as the sky cracked into a dusty pink, Marcy stepped out and noticed something odd. A single marigold, the same one Jonas had brought her, lay flattened, trampled. The rest of the garden was untouched. Her stomach tightened. Accidents happen, she thought. Probably a raccoon. A dog. Still, she walked over, lifted the wilted stalk, and placed it gently on the bench. The nameplate beside it, "Hope always grows back," gleamed in the rising sun. But 2 days later, more damage appeared. Subtle. A broken twig. A trail of soil smeared like claw marks across the edge of the garden bed. A cracked watering can. Then came the note. Stuffed under her door. No envelope. Just folded like something meant to be hidden. The handwriting was jagged and sharp. "You think flowers erase the dead? Get over it. Real grief doesn't need an audience." Marcy stood frozen, fingers trembling. This wasn't just Karen's voice, it was her signature. Cold, detached, blaming. But she was gone, wasn't she? She called Reggie. "Do you think she's still around?" He didn't hesitate. "Maybe. Or someone who thinks like her." The garden had stirred something, not just in Marcy, but in the neighborhood. And maybe not everyone welcomed that light. That's when Reggie installed a new camera. A hidden one this time. Discreet. Facing the garden from a birdhouse he rigged himself. "Let's catch the ghost," he joked, trying to lighten the weight in her chest. What they caught wasn't a ghost, it was Elaine. Elaine lived 4 doors down. She had always smiled tightly at Marcy, always changed the subject when Ezra was mentioned, always rushed her kids past the garden like it was a cemetery instead of a sanctuary. But what the footage showed was clear. 2:17 a.m. Hoodie up, flashlight in hand. She crouched by the flowers, yanked one, paused, then gently placed it back, almost as if regretting it mid-crime. When confronted, Elaine broke down almost immediately. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, sobbing on Marcy's porch, clutching a cold mug of untouched tea. I lost my daughter 3 years ago. No one knew. I didn't tell anyone. And then your garden. Felt like a spotlight. Like everyone remembered your child. But not mine." Silence. Even Reggie didn't speak. Elaine went on. "I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself. For not planting something. For not grieving right. You were brave enough to remember him publicly. And I couldn't even say her name aloud." Her voice cracked. "I thought maybe if I ruined it, I wouldn't feel so alone." Marcy leaned forward. Her voice was gentle but strong. "You were never alone, Elaine. You just thought silence was strength." They sat together, 2 mothers bound by invisible thread, grief, guilt, and now, truth. The next day, something remarkable happened. Elaine showed up at the garden, holding a seed packet. Baby's breath. "I want to plant this," she said, eyes red but clear. "For Lily." And she did. Jonas helped her dig. Reggie handed her gloves. Even the old man from the HOA brought compost. That week, 5 more flowers were planted, each with a small tag. Names, dates. One tag simply read, "For the ones we never got to name." The garden was changing. It was no longer just Ezra's. It was becoming a living archive of grief shared, not hidden. A place of holy defiance, not of death, but of forgetting. By mid-June, local schools had begun organizing quiet field trips. Kids brought drawings. A Girl Scout troop built a kindness rock path. Even a pastor from a nearby church asked if they could hold a sunset prayer there every Good Friday. And though Karen was gone, her shadow remained now as a contrast, a warning. Because the world would always have Karens. People who confuse control with safety, who lash out at what they don't understand, who weaponize silence, who punish vulnerability. But the garden had become proof of something greater. That cruelty, even when loud, is never the final word. And that's when Marcy received an unexpected envelope. From Karen. No return address, but unmistakable. The handwriting had softened. Inside was a single-page letter. "I watched from my cousin's house. I saw the garden come back. I thought it would break you, but it didn't. It broke me. I wanted control. I wanted order. You gave people permission to feel, and I hated you for it. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I am sorry. Not just for what I did, but for what I became. For how I let my pain swallow the good that was left. I still don't believe in God. But I believe in what I saw bloom again. Don't stop planting. Even if people like me try to tear it up. Especially then." No signature. Just those last lines, heavy with something that almost sounded like surrender. Marcy folded the letter. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply walked into the garden, knelt by the edge, and planted a single seed. She didn't mark it. Didn't tell anyone. She just waited.